Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University. We're about a week out from the release of the second part of the DLC for Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, the Crown Tundra, and so far I've been really enjoying it and hopefully you have been too. When they were first announced, I really liked the names of these two expansions, the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. I mean, they both just sound so grand and interesting, and while the Isle of Armor is sort of seen by some as relatively lackluster, I've seen nothing but positivity about the Crown Tundra, and I fully agree. I'm really enjoying it. As I was streaming my playthrough of it, which you can find up in the corner, I noticed a couple things, though. And one of the things that I noticed was actually that the name Crown Tundra is actually incorrect. Here's why. So the term tundra has actually a very specific meaning when, used in the terms of, ecosystems and biology. Tundra is defined as a biome where tree growth is really hindered by just cold temperatures and the really short growing season. Instead of trees, you get things like shrubs and grasses and mosses and lichens, really nothing above knee height, if that. Tundra can actually be broken down into three different types. First, there's the Arctic Tundra, which is probably what you think of when you think of tundra, where it's just these vast, very flat areas of really low vegetation with animals that you normally think of with super northern places like polar bears, reindeer, and muskoxen. Next, we have the Antarctic Tundra, which is really different just because Antarctica, it does have plants, but not really the kind that are seen everywhere else. They have basically just lichens, some mosses, and some liverworts, which are like moss cousins, but they have no vascular plants, so no grasses, no trees, no shrubs, nothing like that. And lastly, there's the Alpine Tundra, which is tundra in mountains above the tree line. Once you get to a certain elevation, you stop getting trees, and then you just get this really frozen, rocky, craggy surface. I actually climbed Mount Washburn in Yellowstone National Park last year, and from this picture, hopefully I'll remember to put it on screen, you can actually see where the trees stop, and you see some scattering of trees here and there, but there's just this vast area of this brown grass. The main characteristic of a tundra biome, though, is the presence of permafrost, or as it sort of sounds, permanently frozen like soil and sediment. Even in the warmest part of the year, there are parts of the soil that will remain frozen, no matter what. Even though I climbed Mount Washburn in early September, when it's still quite warm in many parts of the world, especially the northern hemisphere, there was snow at the top. And if there's snow, on the ground at the top, the ground beneath it is definitely still frozen. Okay, so now that we know what a tundra is, why doesn't the Crown Tundra actually fit that description? It all comes down to the trees. As I mentioned, trees just don't really exist in the tundra. It is too cold, the ground is too frozen for their, intricate, big root systems, and there just isn't enough sunlight throughout the year for that big of a plant to grow. So if this area isn't tundra, then what is it? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's actually another type of really cold, snowy, mostly, actually exclusively northern, biome that is not quite tundra, but not the normal forests just with places that get snow, like where I'm from in northern New York. We have lots of trees and we get lots of snow, but it is not this type of biome. It is between the temperate forests and the tundra. This type of biome is called the taiga, not tiger without the R, taiga. And it's more commonly called, at least here in North America, called the Boreal Forest. And it's actually extremely important to the global ecosystem. The taiga is actually the largest, in terms of land area, the largest terrestrial biome in the world, and it produces a very significant portion of the oxygen that you breathe. The taiga is essentially just this massive circle of conifer trees that just circle the globe. This biome can also be found in some relatively short mountain ranges, not so tall that they lose their trees, but tall enough that they are not quite your normal temperate forest where it's mostly pines and firs. Sort of the main characteristic of the taiga environment is the trees. Specifically, it's sort of the last section of trees before you actually get to the tundra. The Crown Tundra doesn't have quite as dense of a tree cover as you might expect from a taiga environment, although I think this kind of makes sense because there's a town there. And, you know, the residents of Freezington, I'm sure, had to get the lumber to build their houses from somewhere, and then they also have to burn wood in their houses to keep warm, so I'm sure that part of this is due to human development. There's also an area, like a subzone of the taiga called the Sparse Taiga, which is exactly what it sounds like, where there's just less trees, where they're farther apart, and in between you have those grasses and mosses and lichens like you see out on the actual tundra. And as makes sense, this is sort of the most tundra-adjacent part of the taiga. It is sort of, these are the last trees that you see before getting out on the flat plain of the tundra, which to me sounds a lot like what you see around Freezington. There is, however, one more nail in the coffin of Crown Tundra not being an actual tundra. At this point, I think it's pretty common knowledge that the Galar region is basically just the UK flipped upside down, and therefore that should make the Crown Tundra area based on Scotland, roughly. So, what kinds of environments do you see in Scotland? I think that pretty much settles it. In my book, that basically seals it for me, that this DLC and this area of Galar should be called the Crown Taiga instead of the Crown Tundra. Let me know your thoughts on all of this down in the comments below, and while you're down there, make sure to click the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any more Crown Taiga content. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science, as well as, if you feel so inclined, we do have a Patreon, the link to which is down in the description, and I'd like to give, once again, a massive shout out to our first patron on the channel, Patty Murphy. Thank you. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.